This is attempt number 2 at making this video, because I filmed some last week and then discovered that they were all completely out of focus and blurry. I'm getting used to this new camera and hopefully this time will be good. And yes, hopefully this video will also be shorter than my first ones, because I really surprised myself in that they were so long. So yeah, hopefully this will be a bit more short and sweet. What I wanted to talk about is the limbo type situation that a lot of people, well, I imagine that a lot of people can be left in, where it's suspected that you've got a physical health condition, in my case PoTS, and you've got really debilitating symptoms, but you're awaiting diagnosis, and you're kind of left in a position where there's no real plan forwards, but you've got to try to find a way to just function and get on as best you can. It's a really difficult position to be left in. In my case, it was a position that I was in for a good few months, where it was clear that I was suffering from all the symptoms of PoTS. It was having a really big impact on my life, but it was a bit of a waiting game, because what happened in my case, which I imagine is the case for everyone else really who's got like suspected PoTS, is that my GP referred me to cardiology for further tests and diagnosis, and the standard waiting time, because it's a non-urgent referral because the symptoms of PoTS aren't life-threatening, so the average waiting time is 4 months, and that's under the NHS, and in my case it was just over 4 months. I don't necessarily think that it's wrong that PoTS is classed as a non-urgent referral, because I am aware that there are other heart conditions that the symptoms are a lot more serious and life-threatening, and it is of course important that they are given priority, but at the same time the symptoms of PoTS can be pretty debilitating, and it can be, well, I know from experience that it's a really difficult position to be left in, where you've got kind of really none of the answers, no clear way forwards. So yes, a lot of that time was just me kind of finding the best way I could to manage the symptoms, but sometimes it would kind of be nice to have someone to check things out with, in that you don't know whether you're kind of doing the right thing and managing the symptoms in the best way that you can. With me, there was definitely a sense of denial. I think that can kind of creep in when you haven't got like a definitive answer, as in that as the diagnosis, and I'll probably make another video about more about the situation that I'm currently in, and a little bit more about me. But I was in a position where I had come out of hospital, like from a mental health admission, and I was in a much better place mentally. I went back to living independently in my flat, which is where I am now, and I was so happy and relieved to be able to do that, because I wasn't sure if I would ever be in a position to do that again, and I almost didn't want to admit to myself and to others really, just how debilitating my PoTS symptoms had become, and that I did, I suppose, have to reach a level of acceptance with it, in that it did hit me that the reality was that I was crawling around my flat because I was finding it so difficult just to be upright at certain times, and also I live alone, so there is quite a safety risk in that sense, in that I was and still am like fainting on a regular basis, and I live alone, so there's a chance that if I was to injure myself, no one would know. I was in a position where my mobility had changed significantly, and it was just about kind of finding a way forwards to function as best I could, in that I started doing a lot more tasks from sitting. And when you don't have a diagnosis, you kind of feel like, oh, you don't necessarily feel validated in the sense of, should I be doing all these things from sitting? But I suppose you've just got to, you're the one who has to live with the problem, and you've just got to find your way. And I did find that when I did more tasks from sitting, it did seem to make a difference, and I had more energy to do tasks like activities from standing that I found more enjoyable, like walking. There were times when I think this must be the case of other people, where when you haven't got like a confirmed diagnosis, where you think to yourself, have I got this all wrong? Is this all in my head? Like almost a denial element in that sense, that you kind of don't want to believe it's true and want to think that if you, like, I don't know, just act like the problem isn't there, it will suddenly disappear. But I have learnt that ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away. Something that did make me realise that it wasn't all in my head is that I absolutely love walking. I used to walk for miles in the past, and I was in a position where I was struggling to walk, and still am, even a short distance. And I thought to myself, like, I really love walking. There's absolutely no reason why I would be struggling. That's what I really want to do, and it felt like my body was letting me down. And I think that was the time for me where I knew that there definitely was something else going on. I wasn't, my mind wasn't like making it up. I was experiencing really bad nausea, to the extent where I just felt so sick that I couldn't eat. I felt too sick to prepare food, and too sick to eat it, and that just seemed to put me in a cycle where it just felt, I felt worse and worse. And my GP did prescribe me like anti-sickness pills, because I suppose like in the meantime we just had to do as best we could to manage the symptoms, because until I had been seen by cardiology or had a diagnosis, then they, like the GPs can't go down like the treatment option and try out different medications. So yeah, I was prescribed anti-sickness, and that did make a big difference to that. You're left in a position where you have really debilitating symptoms, and in my case, like, I do have friends and family, they're not really nearby, like my family are kind of an hour's drive away, and they do help as much as they can, but they work and they're not available all the time. I wouldn't expect them to be, and it can be quite difficult to come to terms with, that you just kind of have to accept help, really, because you need it, but without like a diagnosis, the support kind of isn't there, and that can be really difficult. It's just a case of making do with what you have, and I am obviously really grateful that people have kind of rallied round and have helped as much as they could. It was really difficult for me during the time where I was waiting to be seen by cardiology and didn't have a diagnosis, was that I kept on fainting in public places, and I had so many ambulance call outs, and because it's like PoTS was unconfirmed at the time, they had, the way like the ambulance crews were treating it was that it was a loss of consciousness with no known cause, and so they were kind of thinking along the lines, well, it could be PoTS, but we don't have that confirmed, so perhaps it's something else. And they were quite keen each time to take me into hospital, which I find very stressful. And when it was happening, like I was taken into A&E, it was really disruptive to my kind of plans. And what happened was that I would have like various tests done, like blood tests and ECGs, and all my physical observations would be normal lying down, but as soon as I like sat up or stood up, then my like heart rate would go right up, and it would just basically confirm that it looked like PoTS, which was good to have, but at the same time they couldn't diagnose it, and like A&E admitted themselves that there was nothing they could really do for me, and having all like the tests, like the sitting and standing ECGs and blood pressure monitored, it flared up my symptoms more, so it felt like I wasn't gaining an awful lot and from it. And some of the ambulance crews, like, they would encourage me to go to hospital thinking that it might speed up my referral to cardiology, but all it confirmed in A&E that was that I was presenting with the symptoms of PoTS, which isn't life-threatening, so it didn't speed up my cardiology referral. I was just discharged saying that they were awaiting, the plan was to await my cardiology appointment. So it became quite frustrating, but something that I did do was that I talked to my GP about it, because the reality was that I felt like I was going to be spending my life in A&E and being taken by ambulances, and I felt like, given that I'd just come from like a hospital admission, like for my mental health, but it is still hospital, I felt a bit sick of hospitals, and that I just wanted as much of a normal life as I could have, and to be able to enjoy as much as I could. GP was really helpful. She came up with, she put like an alert out on the like ambulance services system, where it explained my situation, and it kind of put out there that I only really need to be taken to hospital if I've like injured myself while fainting, or I've like vomited after fainting, or not come round very well. But in any other case, like if my observations are normal, then I'm fine not to go to hospital. And she also like said to me that if that is the case, then you can like refuse to be taken, and almost advised me to do that. And it is very difficult to go against kind of medical advice when you don't want to go against like medical professions, but at the same time you do have to think about like what's best for your life overall, and it was like a huge relief to feel as though I'm not going to be carted off to hospital like a few times, I don't know, at least a couple of times a week. Really difficult situation to be left in, where you're awaiting diagnosis or tests, and it just seems like you're never going to get there. And I really hope that for other people their wait isn't as long, but I think if you are in this position, like really all you can do is just find your way to manage as best as you can, and to accept any help that's offered to you, however difficult that must be. And it is just about finding your way to manage, because no one like has written a guidebook on how to deal with a situation like that. So yeah, and I think it's as important as well to kind of hold on to what's important to you and in your life. Yeah, so hopefully you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful in some way. I don't know if I've made much sense now that I'm thinking about it, and I'd be really interested to know what kind of other people's experiences were with the diagnostic process with PoTS and how long you had to wait without answers. Yeah, I would be really interested to know, because that was kind of the point of me making these videos, is that I want to hear from other people, from their experiences, and hopefully I've helped in some way by sharing mine. Okay, hopefully you'll have another video soon. Okay, bye.